Hi, welcome back to Random Reading Pathways. I'm Matt, and I have a couple tags that I haven't got a chance to go ahead and do yet. So I wanted to try to clear the backlog of tags and get some of those done. So I thought I would start with the oldest one I have that I haven't got to yet, which is the book murderer tag. I was tagged to do this by Bryan over at Adventures in Literature. So thank you, Bryan, for tagging me in this, and I enjoyed looking at your responses. Yeah, unfortunately, this tag is not so timely as it was 3 or 4 weeks ago during the Halloween season, but nevertheless, I wanted to go ahead and get it done. So I'm just going to go through the prompts and see what I come up with. So just before starting, in reading through these and trying to think through some answers, I think I came up with an ultimate kind of statement or ultimate opinion on this entire topic. It's a slippery slope. I think I kept thinking that to myself as I was going through the different answers, and so that's going to be my ultimate conclusion here is book murderer behavior is a bit of a slippery slope that if you start dipping your toes in, you may end up being a full-on book murderer. So we'll get to that. But prompt number 1 for this tag is spine breaking. So what do you think about spine breaking, basically? I've seen some other people respond and talk about, occasions of intentional spine breaking, maybe to break the book in and make it more readable or flexible. And also, of course, unintentional spine breaking where it just, the book starts breaking and coming apart and just as it wears down and gets read more and more. So yeah, either version of those. I think I'll join what seems to be somewhat of a universal response, which is I like to avoid it at all costs if possible. Certainly some books that get heavy use and heavy rereads are inevitably going to go that route, but yeah, it's always kind of sad when that happens, when the book starts breaking apart. And yeah, I think it is one of those slippery slopes where, if the spine breaks even a little bit, it's just the first step toward the inevitable destruction of that book overall. So yeah, I'm avoiding spine breaking wherever I can. So prompt number 2 is bookmarks or dog-earing pages. So what struck me is it's kind of interesting talking about dog-earing pages because there's kind of different usages of that, I think. So if you're just straight up comparing it one-to-one with bookmarking, I mean, in that case, with dog-earing, the purpose of doing it then would be to save your place in a book. I've never been a fan of that because just me personally, I find that I am never really able to break off big chunks of a book as far as reading at a time. I'm kind of more of a 5 pages here, 10 pages here, one chapter when I can squeeze it in here and there. So that being the case, I think if I'm dog-earing pages to save my place in a book, there's going to be a lot of dog ears by the end of that book. So then it just becomes a little messy and a lot of those pages are going to be raised and the book's not going to close nice and flat anymore. So yeah, strictly saving my place. For me, I go through books in too many small chunks for that to really be a good idea. As far as saving like an important place in a book or something you want to revisit, maybe dog earing is a little better then because you can kind of just gently flap it down and make a mental note of, make sure I return to this page later at some point. But again, the question seems to be about saving your place. So I'm going to choose bookmarks for that because, again, they can go in and out nice and easily and they don't make any lasting or permanent impressions on the book. So let's see. Number 3 is page tearing or ripping. Yeah, so I think this is another slippery slope kind of one. So admittedly, I have in the past ripped pages near the front or end of the book where they're just, extra blank pages, or there may be kind of catalogs at the end where sometimes book publishers will put a page or two with others from their catalog in there. So I have occasionally torn off either full pages or pieces of pages from those to usually just mark a place in a book if I don't have a bookmark handy. But again, this one strikes me as a little bit of a slippery slope. So I have a couple examples here. So, I mean, here's a book, Possession by A.S. Byatt. I got a used copy of this some time ago, and Yeah, I think this is an example of when I kind of did this here in the back. So this is a kind of rundown of the publisher's other offerings, and I needed a bookmark at some point, so I tore off part of a page. But again, later when I look back at that, I kind of wish I hadn't. And the thing is, I think the slippery slope takes you to a point where if you get comfortable ripping small portions like that or entire pages out, eventually it may come back to bite you. So I kind of have an example of that here. So I had to pull this book back out of the bookshelf. I said a couple videos ago that I was definitely done talking about it, but I guess not quite. So China by Alan Wall, another book I read recently, and this was kind of an interesting situation here. So this, I'm not going to spoil this and show what's on the page, but basically this is the end here. So here's Alan Wall, and you can see next to it, if you could see that, there's a page that's ripped off. And the book just ends, and then there's a ripped off page. So I remember when I was reading this, I wasn't sure if I finished reading it because it was just very drastic. There was the last word of the book, and then there was evidence here, you know, that somebody had ripped off this page, and then it was the end. So I kind of was left a little bit like confused, and it was a little slightly ambiguous if I actually finished the book, which is that's not a pleasant feeling. When you read the end of the book and you're able to close it finally, you want that sense of finality that, yes, indeed, I did finish the book, and I couldn't really say that with that one 100%. So that was a weird feeling. And I think if you start tearing pages out, it's inevitable you might experience that as well. So then, let's see, number 4 is writing in books. So again, I think this is another slippery slope kind of one. So the thing with me is I typically, you know, only really go for like used books or library books. So obviously if I'm buying a used book, I would like to get one with as minimal markings and writings as possible, especially since they haven't come from me. And, you know, by the same token, you know, I've been buying used books at a pretty good clip lately, but the whole idea of that, in my opinion, is at some point down the road, I'm probably going to take a good chunk of those and unhaul them and release them back into the flow of used books that are circulating. So, you know, with that being kept in mind, I probably want to try to avoid writing too much in them, you know, for my own sake, to be able to unhaul them successfully at some point. But when you're kind of on the gray area there of you do some writing, but, you know, it's not overwhelming, I think it's just a slippery slope. So again, I have this one handy here, Possession, which I read at the beginning of this year, and it's a used copy, which I think is a good example of the slippery slope. So it went pretty good for a while without much writing. It was pretty clean, and then, you know, you started seeing a little bit pop up, you know, some underlining and stuff, and it was kind of keeping to itself. It wasn't really interfering or anything like that. But I think once I noticed the writing starting in the book, you know, then it started to become a little more aggressive at some point. So you can see at the top of this page here, it's starting to now intrude into the words a little bit. It's starting to get a little more wild in its handwriting, and so it starts to become a little distracting. And then as I went further in the book, I started flagging some other examples of when I think writing in a book leads to this slippery slope where all of a sudden you're using it for any kind of writing you have to do, and it might not even have to do with the book. So all of a sudden I started realizing here on page 310, whoever had this before started doing math equations in here of some kind. I'm not sure. 6 plus 10 and a half, 310. Looks like they're measuring something, or days of the week. I can't exactly tell, but yeah, a little distracting there. I was trying to decipher what was even going on with that note. And then another memorable one from this book that I came across was, again, if you start getting too comfortable writing in the book, you're just going to start scribbling whatever pops into your head. So on this page here, I remember coming across this, the Glacier Express. Still to this day, I don't know what that means, but, you know, I was reading kind of a nice, you know, pivotal kind of last third section of the book here, and then my eyes were distracted by the Glacier Express, which, again, probably could have looked it up. I'm sure it has some meaning to it, but yeah, so that was an example of a book that I saw the slippery slope of writing in a book playing out in real time, and it just got a little weirder as it went. So I wasn't too happy with that. And I'd be remiss too, without commenting quickly with the writing in books thing, if I didn't say that as somebody who went to law school, you know, reading the case books and reading the big legal books, we were basically expected to write in the books extensively. And yeah, so now going forward, I kind of just associate writing in a book with that experience. And, you know, not that it was all good or all bad, but it just has more of like a strictly academic type feeling associated with it. And yeah, a little triggering at times to remember trying to scroll and squeeze tiny little notes in the margins of these giant case books. And yeah, I think I've written enough in books just from that alone to satisfy me for a lifetime. So yeah, I don't plan on doing it anymore. And then so finally, question 5 is ripping covers and bookbinding. Ripping covers, again, similar to like ripping pages. I'm not sure if it's unintentional or intentional, or if your thoughts are just, you know, whether that's something to avoid. In general, I would hate to see a book cover be ripped for any reason. I tried to just check my shelves for an example of something like that. I do have 2 young kids, somewhat young, so, you know, I'm definitely no stranger to books being taken down off shelves and reformatted, reworked into all different kinds of creations. And that involves ripping, tearing, coloring, dog-earing, everything on this list. Kids are generally pretty good book murderers. So I don't know how this one happened, but this is The Virginian by Owen Wister. I showed this in a recent video, and yeah, kind of forgot that this little corner here is unfortunately ripped off. You never quite know how these things happen. But otherwise it's a perfect condition copy, so it's kind of just really kind of deflating when you hold up the cover and that's the end product there. So yeah, ripping covers, not cool for any reason. Now bookbinding, in looking at some people's videos who did this tag, I guess I kind of learned a little bit about bookbinding, that it is sort of this you know, thing that people pursue, like an art form almost, where they will repurpose or kind of rework a book binding, either themselves or through somebody that professionally does that or whatnot, to kind of make a one-of-a-kind cover, customize their own binding and back cover and front cover. So yeah, once I learned that, I saw some good examples. There was somebody who did this tag, I think it was either this tag or maybe just another video they posted where they, and unfortunately, I tried to track down that video and remember who it was, but I couldn't. So if that comes to me, I'll make sure to link this person in the description, but it's escaping me now. But basically, somebody whose video I watched, they showed a really pretty, nice, unique copy of a book that they reworked and rebound into their own unique version. So once I saw that, it kind of sealed it for me. But yeah, just in general, I like the idea. Kind of fits hand in hand with my whole ethos of my channel here, of just the randomness of everything. And yeah, I like throwing together different versions of series so the covers don't match. I kind of enjoy that whole chaotic element of it. So certainly if somebody has the ability and the creativity to bind their own cover and make it theirs uniquely, then all for it. Yeah, more power to you. And then yeah, I thought it would just be funny kind of to end this video full circle with, I do have a book that I think is a fully murdered book. So the whole idea of the slippery slope of being a book murderer, I think once you go down that road, inevitably you will become a full book murderer. And yeah, I have this copy of my old, original, well-worn, well-read copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So this I've kept around just to make sure I have it somewhere. But yeah, here is what a fully murdered book looks like. So this used to be Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Somehow I've kept it. I think I have all the pages here. Some of them are literally single pages. Some of them in tiny little pamphlets that came apart from the rest. But yeah, I think that would be my final conclusion on this is, yeah, it always kind of hurts me when my original copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is so murdered like this. So this is where you end up if you go down the slippery slope of being a book murderer. But yeah, that's my thoughts on those questions. The last part here is just to tag other people. Like I said, I didn't get around to doing this video for almost a month, so I'm sure everybody who's been tagged has probably done this already, but if I find any channels that I don't think have done it, I'll try to tag them. So, but yeah, that's it on the Book Murderer tag. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back soon with more updates.